Have you ever been just living your life on a nice day without a care in the world only to be suddenly interrupted by the sight of a commercial? It's something nobody likes, yet we all experience. But did you know that overexposure to said commercials can bring about adverse side effects? Advertisitis is a terrible condition that can be brought on by too much exposure to forms of advertisements or commercials as we may know them. Upon infection, the host will rapidly mutate into forms more suitable for advertisements as we see with this child here. They are then compelled to create more commercials as we see the specimen carving into his desk. Worry not though, as this specimen was eliminated shortly after this recording by the shadow government agencies. Great work, boys. Keep it up. But how can you avoid becoming like this? Let's take a look at some other examples so you know how to better avoid them. This brave teacher here is thoroughly examining each and every one of her students for symptoms of advertisitis. When she deems one of them is too far gone to be saved, they are then sent out into the wilderness to fend for themselves and never be seen again. Thank you for your selfless work, Susan. Your minimum wage check will be in the mail shortly. Joey here has isolated himself in his home after witnessing these two advertise their friendship. A good choice, Joey. As your bones atrophy and you give in to the madness of isolation, you can pat yourself on the back knowing you will never give in to these happy individuals advertising their friendship, you lonely loser. It can be tough to tell what is and what is not an ad, but if you believe you have seen an advertisement recently, whether or not you skipped it after 5 seconds, report yourself to the local authorities so we can keep our country safe. More advice as to not fall into the clutches of consumerism can be found on the handout that will materialize in front of you shortly. It may make you question your morals, but that's just the American way.
Wow, this really is making me question all my morals. Whenever talking about the business of advertising, you gotta realize that like 90% of the people in the industry of creating advertisements have already sold their soul away to the devil to get their position in the first place. I can't look at modern commercials without questioning if there was even a single human on the creation team given how bland and corporate so many ads are nowadays. What a happy and uplifting way to start this video, I know. It only gets worse from here. I only really think that though when I look back on older commercials. Sure, those monetary vampires still had the same goal of sucking the money out of your wallet, but at least they did it with half a smile on your face. I mean, think about it. Old commercials used to lie to you by making you think that is actually
Swords and Serpents takes you to a new world where you become one of a band of super warriors. Do you enter the dungeon? Choose your weapon.
Now commercials lie to you by trying to convince you that you'll be happy like these generic smiling actors are, instead of how you actually look when playing video games. That's not to say that all these old commercials were necessarily better though. Sure, they're more fun to watch and look back on now, but judging them on how good they were as actual commercials makes you realize that most of them had no damn idea what they were doing back then. Okay, well, we got this new game coming out. I have no clue what it's about, or if it's even fun. Honestly, your guess is as good as mine, but we need to make a good commercial. Any ideas? I don't know, maybe just like show a kid playing the game, then he gets sucked into the TV and runs around the game world for a bit. That works, I guess. Jenkins, you're a genius. Let's do that for every commercial for like the next decade. Wait, what? That's not what I... Yeah, for some reason, back when video game commercials were still gaining their footing, whenever they ran out of ideas or something, they would pretty much always just show a kid playing a video game, then all of a sudden the character in the game they're playing would gain sentience, ask them if they wanted to see something cool, then boom, commit a felony. Easy as that. I guess the whole idea was to show how the game is so immersive, you'll feel like you're actually part of the game's world. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I don't really want to be in the world of Centipede. I mean, just look at what happened to the last kid who got sent there.
It could change your life.
Help! Somebody call an exterminator!
I feel like this is a pretty good example of how insane these old game commercials used to be. I have no goddamn idea how the hell they decided a commercial like this is what would make people think, yes, this is the game I want to spend my time and money playing. In this minute-long commercial, it shows a total of 3 seconds of actual gameplay. I'm not exaggerating in the slightest. A grand total of 70 frames. I counted one by one. So to say the standards of video game commercials have changed over the years would be a bit of an understatement. Nowadays, you gotta do stuff like show gameplay and make a high quality experience at a fair price. You know, stuff AAA developers hate to do. Which I guess is exactly why back then they just said fuck it and kept showing more kids getting sucked into TVs. It's not like Centipede was the only culprit of this either. The vast majority of commercials from this era do the exact same thing, and I'm sure they knew full well what they were doing at the time by hardly showing any gameplay. Nowadays, it's much easier to advertise something with graphics that look conventionally beautiful to pretty much anyone, as opposed to something that looks the way a punch to the face feels. But when these old commercials weren't showing Sonic kidnapping someone through a TV, they would do the next best thing and just dress some poor actor up as the game character and have him flail around on set for a while. What do you mean the next best thing to kidnapping someone? As I just said, they would go to any lengths to not show any semblance of gameplay in these old commercials, so why not just act it out in real life? Well, I can tell you exactly why not, because half the time it would end up as an absolute disaster. Sure, sometimes it's easier to adapt a video game into live action, something like Mario, Zelda, Earthworm Jim. Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see why this is a terrible idea now. To be honest though, I'd say I actually do kind of like these live action commercials. Sure, a lot of them may not be honest in terms of what the game actually is, but that's just something I've come to accept with these older commercials. It's fun to see how they decided to adapt these games into live action, and many of them were pretty successful in being memorable, which is one of the main goals of commercials. Whether or not you want Kirby with teeth to be stuck in your head is a different story, but at least that means it was a memorable commercial. My point being is that back then, it was all about leaving an impression in the minds of the viewers. A lot of the time, they probably just thought games weren't impressive enough to carry a commercial on its own, so they just figured why not get a floating Wario head to hypnotize the audience into forfeiting all mortal possessions to Wario, because if you're gonna worship a false idol, it may as well be Wario, the spitting image of a false saint. Animated commercials like this were another pretty popular style of game advertising back then as well, and they're pretty easily my favorite out of the bunch. It's a nice middle ground between showcasing the general vibe of the game while not feeling as dishonest when they still show very little gameplay, because the last thing you want false prophet Wario to do is be dishonest. Generally, the animation in these commercials would be pretty damn good too. The Mario Land 2 one I brought up being a good example. It has a really smooth, well done animation on Wario's head while still showing some gameplay. I unironically think that these are really good commercials. They're entertaining, they leave an impression in your head, they show our Lord and Savior Garlic in all his glory, they actually show gameplay. What more could you want? I mean, yeah, these commercials are great and all, but what am I supposed to do as a consumer in the late 80s, early 90s who feels happy about their purchase of a Nintendo console?
Get Joe Montana free, Pat Riley free, Buster Douglas free, Super Monaco GP free, or Collins free. What Nintendo?
Okay. I understand why the Nintendo of America office had a hung Sonic plush in their office now. Peace was never an option for that blue fuck. Ah yes, the attack ad, a style that has more or less gone extinct in the world of video game commercials these days, but back then there was no problem with depicting Sonic as the Antichrist we all know he is. Sega Does What Nintendo Don't is one of the most iconic game advertising campaigns of all time, and is kind of what started the whole console wars thing. I obviously wasn't around when this campaign aired, but I remember even when I was in school, the console wars still raged on. Many intellectual debates between 5th graders took place on a playground about the Xbox 360 versus the PS3, while I tried my damn hardest to keep people from knowing I actually liked my Wii and GameCube better, because you're still a nerd on the playground if you didn't exclusively play Call of Duty and FIFA. Obviously, that was a lot different than the Sega Nintendo console wars, but I genuinely believe these commercials back then were the catalyst for the console wars that kept going through decades. Thankfully though, the console wars have pretty much ended, and there's a level of respect between them now, a respect built upon a decade of war over kids saying their console is better because it has way more bits than the other one without knowing for a second what the hell a bit even is. These commercials thrived off making people feel like they weren't cool unless they owned a Genesis. After all, when you're a kid having an argument with your friends on the playground because you own a dumb stupid baby Nintendo instead of the cool hip new Genesis, you're a lot more likely to ask your parents to buy you a Genesis to stop the rabid Sonic fans. After all, there's no better source of revenue for a multi-billion-dollar company than the anger of children. Wait, hold on a second, isn't that kind of immoral? Don't think about it too much. These old commercials from the 80s and 90s are entertaining and all, but half the reason I love to talk about them is because they slowly changed over the decades. There was a bit of a bizarre middle ground era of commercials between what we just talked about and the stuff you see thrown at you before a YouTube or Twitch stream now. The ads of the late 2000s and early 2010s. Of course, that might seem like a bit of a jump in time, but me being the 19-year-old Zoomer that I am, I like to talk about commercials that actually aired in the time when I existed. An era that was truly defined by those weird blue screens at the end of every infomercial that had a phone number on it while some dude begged and pleaded with you to please God call the number on screen in the next 5 minutes so they can give you like 3 extra copies of the thing you only wanted 1 of for the price of 1. The unfortunate thing about this time period though is that there weren't really as many video game commercials as there used to be. You might remember there being some more of them, but when you account for the fact that half of them were GameFly ads, you realize there weren't that many. They were still obviously a thing, of course, but this was the turning point for how they were presented. It seems like developers and advertisers began to have some more confidence in their game's graphics and put more of an emphasis on gameplay, because look how real it looks. Okay dude, whoa, graphics have peaked. Ain't nothing gonna top seeing the Burger King's face in 480p. What are graphics gonna look like in just a couple of years at this rate? Mario wears fucking denim? When you've got such advanced denim graphics, you gotta show them off in the commercials. After all, why even bother buying a game if it doesn't have that? Or at least that's what I lie in bed thinking about every night. At this point, developers had refined 3D graphics enough to the point where it was starting to look impressive to the average person, so instead of hiding it behind some poor actor pretending to be the game character, it was usually the focus of the commercial. Generally speaking though, I feel like that was the only real constant I can identify in this era. I'm pretty sure there were others, but I kind of see this as the experimental age of most modern game commercials. We just saw how distinctive of a style the 80s and 90s had, and most game ads we see today have a general style that we'll see soon. 2000s though, you could turn on the TV and see an incredible artistic commercial with a powerful premise that sticks in your memory for ages, then followed by the goddamn Burger King. If we were talking about commercials in general, then the rise of the infomercial style at the time would be a pretty clear trend, but games never quite reached into that style all too much. There was probably a bit of influence taken though. I noticed overall that a lot of the voiceover speaking over gameplay clips sounded more like sales pitches as opposed to songs or people talking about the games like we saw in the 80s and 90s. Other than that, however, it just felt like everyone was trying whatever the hell they could to try and stand out, and before you ask, yes, that does include babies getting launched out of windows while aging rapidly and falling into a grave to promote Xbox. It was sort of like a battle between the weirdly artistic and absolute insanity. Take the Halo 3 Believe commercial, for example. All it features is sweeping shots of miniature Halo figurines with soldiers in the Covenant at war with a single piano for the music. It simultaneously is such a simple as well as complex ad. The thing that even if you have no clue what Halo is, you're going to be at least a little intrigued as to what's going on. Then all it shows at the end is a screen with just Believe on it, followed by the name of the game. If you were somebody who was already interested in Halo or just games in general at the time and saw this on TV, this alone would likely sell you on the game. Hell, even if you weren't interested in video games, seeing this at the very least would make you interested to see what a game with a commercial like this even is. It doesn't show any gameplay footage, but I don't think it has to. The goal is to get you interested in whatever the hell is going on here. Interweaving this with random gameplay footage would only detract from it. They knew if somebody found this interesting, then they would look up more about the game on their own. They don't have to tell you to do that. A truly incredible commercial that deserves to be continually remembered throughout the history of video game advertising. Hold on, let me check something real quick. Oh shit, it's still there. Hey Ma, get the holy water. There's a weird looking possessed baby on the TV. Looks like grandma the fucking thing. Okay, yeah, so this was the other style of video game commercials that I just mentioned earlier. No, they don't get much less weirder from here, and yes, it is indeed too late to turn back. This was Sony's way of introducing us all to the PS3, and needless to say, I don't think a commercial with the same vibe as the Ring tape was a good first impression. I'm honestly grateful I never saw this commercial while watching TV as a kid, because if I did, I think it would have scared me, especially if I saw this while lying in bed trying to fall asleep. If you think about it enough, I'm sure you could find some meaning in the whole thing, but that doesn't really matter that much in my opinion, because this is a commercial. This is something that you would randomly see for 30 seconds, then immediately get your attention pulled away to the next ad. It's not something you have the chance to ponder for the deeper meanings of, so when you strip all that away, it just becomes a nightmare of a commercial. To be fair, however, one of the most important aspects of any advertisement is just to leave an impression in your mind. The longer it remains in your head, the more likely you are to buy whatever they're selling. And in that regard, it is quite effective. Usually advertisers try to make them memorable through stuff like catchy songs or cool visuals, but yeah, I guess this works too. Hell, you're gonna have plenty more time to remember it when you're not sleeping because of it. So I guess in that sense you could argue that this is a good commercial. Okay, but getting my wisdom teeth pulled was way more memorable than this, so does that make my experience of getting my teeth ripped out of my skull a good commercial too? Obviously, these are two extreme examples of both sides of the spectrum, but most game commercials would fall into one of the two camps. Don't think that the more artistic ones were always good and the weird, insane ones were always bad, though. There are good and bad examples for each side. Generally speaking though, the latter ones did tend to get a bit too weird for their own good and just ended up being kind of stupid. So I think the more artistic ones, quote unquote, were the better style, but there were still plenty that were just unintelligible nothing commercials. And in the end though, this experimental phase just kinda ended with everybody realizing that this was kind of ridiculous and came to the conclusion that creativity is cringe and pretty much all commercials should just be generic and safe as hell. So, what kind of iconic or notable commercials are from the current age we're in now?
Well, that's easy. There's so many. There's like there's what I mean, wasn't no there's yeah, I gotta be honest, I don't even know what the hell a TV is.
Yeah, so speaking strictly in terms of video game commercials that aired on TV, there's pretty much nothing of note. I know there still are TV commercials that are genuinely good and creative, but they're so rare to see nowadays. I've been sitting in front of my TV for hours waiting for them to appear, but no matter how long I sit there, they just don't show up. Cable TV has been on a pretty steady decline for like the past decade, to the point where I genuinely can't remember the last time me or anybody I know has actively watched a live cable TV. You can take comfort in the inevitable fact that one day in the near future, you'll be talking to a kid and when you mention watching TV, they'll ask, "What's a TV?" Disregarding that existential dread though, the advertisers had to adapt to this new landscape and like the rest of us, moved over to the internet. In this new, even more hellish setting, they had to change how their commercials were formatted since there weren't any designated commercial blocks for them to play in. And now we're just left with the ads that play before videos and streams that we all know now. There are three categories that a video game ad on the internet can fall into now: normal gameplay trailers, boring corporate panding, or wretched scum ads. I was talking about a wide spectrum for the 2000s commercials, but we're on a whole nother level now. When you click on a video, there's like a 50-50 chance that you're either going to see a cool Tears of the Kingdom trailer, or Zoomer Luigi trying to sell you virtual metaverse land. The fact that that's even a sentence I'm able to say with a straight face as if it's any sort of normal is concerning to me, but please God, I'll do anything to procrastinate having to talk about the terrible scam mobile ads. So I'm just going to talk about normal trailers. These are probably the best form of video game ads we see commonly on the internet nowadays. They just take a trailer that they already used as a reveal for a game or was shown at some sort of event and play it as an ad. It saves them the effort of having to come up with a whole new commercial for better or for worse, because if it saves me from having to look at stuff like this, then I'm fine with losing out on what could be a mildly entertaining commercial at best usually. That and the trailers themselves usually do a pretty good job of showing the game. If you weren't already set on buying it though when you first saw the trailer, then this style doesn't really accomplish much to get you any more hyped for the game. I feel like their biggest concern is just to get the game's name out there in the world more though, and just remind people, less so to get new people who weren't interested in the game in the first place to buy it. Overall, a fine approach that I'm okay with, even if it can be pretty lacking or uninspired at times. Whatever the case, it saved me from having to see the boring corporate ads. You know exactly what I'm talking about here. The kind of stuff that you still occasionally see in passing on TV, now just translated to the internet. These always give off the vibe of those damn brand accounts on Twitter or something like that. They're trying to be all cool and hip with the kids. Like that one time the Burger King Twitter posted this. Hey Tucker, I'm a bit busy right now. Can you just grab my phone and tweet something on the brand account for me today? It doesn't really even have to be funny, just whatever is fine, they don't really care.
Oh yeah, dude. No problem. Don't worry. I got this.
So many of these massive corporations will do anything in their power to pander to such wide audiences that it just never works. It's always lurking around the corner somewhere, ready to jump scare you and try to sell you some of the most boring non-humor you've ever seen. They're the kind of commercials that always feature that level of uncanny happiness from the actors, where they're just beaming at each other over the tiniest thing. Like, dude, ain't nobody ever had half that level of happiness in a room that also happens to have a Wii U in it. And unlike the other two categories of ads, the only aspect of them that has some sort of level of humor in it to me is how little anybody cares about these kind of ads. So little to the point where I actually have no examples to bring up. I have no clue what the hell I'm gonna put on screen for this section when I'm editing this, because as far as I know, nobody even cares to archive and upload these sorts of ads. So good luck, future me. Point is, I hate these kind of ads, so let's move on and finish this with the... oh no. The mobile game ads. Truly, the final boss of advertising in this modern age. to the point where it doesn't even feel right to call them ads. They're not even advertising their game and suggesting that you should play it. They're not even giving us sales pitches to why their game is better than whatever else you're playing. They're coercing you. They're saying, hey fuckface, play my terrible scam Unity asset flip, as I force you to sit through the most disgusting, wretched ad you've ever seen. Because yeah, this makes me want to play your damn game. Why stop here? Listen, I think you know what I'm talking about here. This is the exact opposite of the last type, in that there are so many examples of this I could use that I can't choose just one to single out. And I don't even want to show half of these ads. Some of them are so vile that they will actually make you sick if you don't have any sort of tolerance to this kind of thing. The games themselves that were being advertised are so unbelievably terrible and are almost always just asset flips that we've looped around to the goddamn 80s with how little gameplay the ads show. The only goal of these games is to more or less scam people out of the money under the mask of a fun video game. And so that's exactly what the ads are built for too. They're made to appeal to kids who don't know any better and are probably just going to use their parents' credit card to spend hundreds of dollars in in-app purchases. A great positive note to end this experience on, I know. The only mildly entertaining part of these mobile game ads is that they can be pretty funny to watch in a so bad it's good sense, and occasionally there will be one that is kind of self-aware and plays on it to be an actually pretty funny ad, but those are really rare to see among the ocean of garbage making up the rest of the space. And I feel like that pretty much covers all of it. Classic age with a lot of really cool commercials that did some fun stuff, but admittedly weren't very good at being honest ads for what games were actually like. The experimental age with some of the coolest and weirdest ones all mixed together in a cacophony of Billy Mays and Halo 3, truly a match made in heaven, and the modern age of safe corporate commercials that feel like they were grown in a lab, contrasted by the weaponized scum advertising. Don't you just love it? You know, all this has made me realize that I don't need to follow this stupid advice. Like, how could I watch so many commercials like that and not want to be a mindless consumer who just buys everything he sees off the TV? And besides, you don't even need to worry about any sort of finances when you just tell people you have way more money than you actually do. I've made so many friends down at the IRS this way. Like, they're really cool dudes, trust me. Like, I think actually they even said they were going to be coming over today, which, like, awesome. I mean, I wasn't really listening as to why, but I think they'll probably be here soon.